What a wonderful morning. I would firstly like to pay my respects and acknowledgement to the custodians, Aranda, who have welcomed me for 10 years. I celebrated a decennial living here last April, so it's been wonderful. I'm just thrilled to have used my canoe for the second time this year to get across this morning, the causeway. In 2008, the former executive director for the Northern Territory Writers Centre, the amazing Sandra Thibodeau, seconded me from the University of Queensland. My background is in the bibliography of Australian literature, and that houses AusLit, which is the resource for Australian literature. She said, Yvette, Gabby Hollows has got some money for the Fred Hollow See My World Foundation for youth and literature stories. She said, would you be interested in coming to the Territory for 7 weeks? I'd been up to the top end, but I had not been to Central. So we did all throughout Katherine, Eastern Kununurra, Barunga, Beswick, right down, in my last stop in November 2008 was Alice Springs. So I get out of the aeroplane, walk into a complete oven, and this man about 5'2" comes and picks me up and he says, "You're Yvette Holt." I said, "Yes." I said, "Who are you?" He said, I'm taking you to town to get you something to eat before we go to the Red Hot Arts." He put out his hand, he says, "My name is Kenny Lawton." And I was completely gobsmacked because, having researched the bibliography of Australian literature, to meet authors all across Australia. So Kenny Lawton would be one of Australia's only Vietnam veteran published authors, Aboriginal published authors. So that was a great honour for me. I would also like to acknowledge the partnership of the Australian Poetry from the Wheeler Centre with the Northern Territory Writers Centre. It's fabulous to be here. I just got off a flight the day before yesterday to come up to launch this amazing book, which has so many wonderful Territorians. I'd like to acknowledge Sally Bothroyd, the Executive Director for the Northern Territory Writers Centre, Danny Powell, the Festival Director for this year's festival, and of course Fiona Durrell, the Executive Manager for NTWC here in Alice Springs. I know you're all waiting to get up and show your thing, but I'd like to read a couple of words from my co-editor, the amazing Margan Margan. If you haven't read Margan Margan, please do. His last book, Grains of Gold, was just published earlier this year. And this is Margan. What is Australian poetry, if not a poetics rooted in contemplative change? Poetry provides a roadmap to processing the key questions in life. Poetry, as we know it, is an experience, a portrait, a slowing down of time by capturing moments that stay with us our entire lives. Poetry is an invitation towards courageous truth-telling and a confrontation between who we are and who we think we are. Poetry is not lawless. It instructs, it demands of us to pay attention to the world around us. It is an expression of what is seen and what is revealed to us, ultimately making beautiful that which is devastating. The process of selecting the poems was both breathtakingly smooth and challenging. It was liberating in that the calibre of poems was of high quality, but also incredibly difficult, as there were many poems that could have been included, and as the physical capacity of any anthology is limited. It was nonetheless a pleasure engaging with the poems, both as a poet and a co-editor. And I've also done a foreword, but mine reads like a minor thesis, so you'll have to buy the book to read it. So we got around 1,000 entries. I was asked in September last year by the publisher CEO for Australian Poetry, Jacinta Laplastria, if I would consider being editor. And of course, it was a great honour and I jumped at the chance. It wasn't until we moved through to November, October, she said, by the way, we're going to do something extraordinary. We're going to have an NT focus. And I just thought that was incredibly a great honour and a great gift. So this is the first time ever that the Australian Poetry have had a specific NT focus. Already the books are on order in the UK, the USA, and I believe Scandinavia. I think the first time ever it's going to be sold in bookstores around Australia. And if you're quick on your feet through transit, I believe at those Darling airport transit lounges as well. Now, Stephen King said, "To write is human, to edit is divine." And as a published poet and an editor, I can concede that those words ring true this morning. I am wearing a splash of red because I'm in mourning for the results this morning, but we won't go there. So without further ado, who wants to hear some of the locals? Yes? I can't hear you. Now, due to flights and clashes, we've got Cezza first, so would you like to come up? Thank you very much.
Good morning, my name's Cezza J, and one of my poems is in the anthology, which I'm really excited about. I'm a beekeeper, so I write a lot around beekeeping in the desert. I grew up in the south of England, so there's a bit of a change from keeping bees from there to here, and I'm inspired by my experiences of the land. Desert bee. I am the desert bee, far, far out there, beyond the edge, behind the centre. I heave my back into the red rock, the ovoid of time, and I listen. I expand universally, a spiral in all directions. I am the desert bee, becoming all that is from the centre to the edge. Thank you.
And next we have Auntie Silvia Neil, please. Thank you.
Old age we can't be avoided. You'll learn, those of you who haven't reached there yet. It's such a perfect day. The creek's running, sun shining. It's the best, isn't it? My poem it had two titles, and titles are really hard to get to. You write, and then you think, what the hell am I going to call it? Well, I do anyway. So it's what is, what was, and what will be. You were always there, the old gum, the one of many in the creek bed, a cosy hollow, a perfume, soft arms rooted in the sand, been there forever. I crawled into that hollow and whispered those words I never got to say to you. Then the sickness came in the night. It came and dragged you away. Arms fighting, reaching out, roots struggling to hold on. But you could not hold on. You were gone. Twigs, leaves left behind, a huge hole, a memory, a sadness that will never go. Thank you for listening.
Wonderful. Thanks, Aunt. Keep the applause coming. It is a marathon, and we have the astounding Sue Fielding.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out for poetry this morning, a sombre morning. And a special thank you to Yvette for applying her craft to editing this beautiful volume. I have a short poem called Alice Springs Hospital. I met a mother leaning crumpled against the shining wall of the children's ward. She looked past me. So I said, "Excuse me, do you mind if I talk to you?" Without a breath, she said, "Yes, I do." Thank you.
Very good. Emma, Thank you, Emma Tremoyden. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My poem's called Uchu, Ringing Like Bells. So Uchu, is the Pinjarra name for Arayonga, west of Alice Springs. Many times you invited me, you and your sister, to your home, this place you spoke of so fondly, the sound of its name spoken in your soft, feathery voice, lifted with a smile. Uchu, ringing like bells. After years of talking about it, I finally went to visit you, driving west of Alice Springs, turning off the sealed highway, just as you had described, a slow gravel road snaking in, cutting through sheer gorge walls, rising steep and rocky either side. Jagged red rock softened with green, lush growth after the rain, reeds springing up, lining a meandering creek, gathering in a lazy pool. Just before reaching the community, I see steps carved into the rock, walking up to a little platform, overlooking the waterhole, a swinging rope looped over a branch, enticing us to leap in. On this day, there were no happy children splashing into the water. On this day, everyone was dressed in black and white, carrying flowers, coming together in our loss, singing to remember the joy you brought to our lives, honouring your kindness and love through prayer. Uchu, the sound of you whispering its name, ringing still in my ears like bells. Gorge walls wrapping around me, green and soft, home to a warm soul. I only wished I'd visited sooner.
Okay, Laurie May, you're up. Round of applause for the tireless worker of poetry, local, organic, tireless effort, Laurie May.
Gotta find my poem. Whoops. There we go. Before I start, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners. It's lovely, as always, to be welcome here on Aranda country. My grandparents' language, Bidra in Queensland, apparently went extinct in 1987, but we know that's not true, and there's been a really wonderful amount of work done to revive that language in Queensland. Have a hard time saying nice things about Queensland at the moment after last night, but there you go. So that's where I'm from. So this poem, it's a very upsetting piece, and I think for me it was upsetting to write. It was about my friend, and I'm sorry if it's pretty hard stuff, but I think that from our trauma and from our upset that we can keep going, and we can survive, and we can, like languages, be rekindled. There are more Aboriginal deaths in custody each year than the acceptable amount of cattle deaths on export ships. Our brothers and sisters are incarcerated at a higher rate than anyone else. But we put export bans to Asia to stop cattle suffering. We go vegan to help the planet while we watch suicide rates climb. We throw blood on fur-bearing old ladies while teenagers tear open their veins. We hang our heads in shame for cattle while another girl hangs herself in vain. So go on and tell me, where's the change? Is this gammon police protective custody? Who are you keeping safe? You want peace on our streets? Keep your peace in its sheath. Stop checking a mother's ID. It's disempowerment over a can of VB. We are stuck in a never-ending loop of facilitating political control through stereotypical racial profiling, all to maintain the status quo of social control. And me, I'd rather be antisocial, colloquial, vocal, completely unacceptable than appease post-colonialist overlords, but I don't really have to worry, do I? See, I'm covered in a visible privilege. I'm sitting pretty in inadmissible evidence, but my ancestors are revenant and still relevant, and I pledge my allegiance. So I'm here to ask the authorities. Man, I'm just wondering, how do you sleep at night? And I'm here to remind you that your glistening career ain't that glistening. The christening your boots received while you were kicking him wasn't very Christian, and the cross you wear around your neck should be heavier than the one you made him wear that night while you were spitting your anti-civilizing civilian sentencing in his direction. You said there were 10 commandments. but all I see are stone fragments. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Laurie. And thus far you can see why we have who we have for this amazing collection of poetry. I'm telling you, this is a not to be missed anthology to purchase, and by way, all of the contributors will receive their copy. Let's keep it going, please, for Maureen Apogina O'Keefe. Thank you, Maureen.
I have a friend at home who doesn't talk. I think he's the silent type. There's not much communication between us. He's not the one to complain or ask questions like, "Where have you been, dear, and what have you been up to?" He never greets me with a kiss. He silently follows me around the house. He comes to watch me cook, as if to say, "What's for dinner, dear?" I go to the table to eat dinner in silence. He just watches. I go and switch the TV on. We don't argue about which channel we want to watch like other couples do. He quietly sits on the couch without saying a word. I go to bed without saying good night. In the morning he comes to my bedroom to see if I'm awake. He never says good morning to me, but follows me to the kitchen as I make breakfast. I eat in silence. He watches me. I take a shower, then I'm off to work. He follows me to the door. He never says, "Have a nice day." I know in my heart he seems to say it in a silent kind of a way.
Maureen.
This story, it's about a fly.
I love it. The silent friend was a fly. I had to ask her at our launch, I think in April. I said, "Who is this guy that is humbugging the beep out of you?" And she said, "Yvette," she said, "the story is about a fly."
They are annoying, yeah, the flies. Yeah.
Because we all know that, men cannot be annoying. Okay. Lenny Shelton. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up.
Morning, everyone. We sing Amazing Grace as people place plastic flowers on the coffin. The line is long and dust rises as we wait to say goodbye. At the edge, young men lean against the white painted fence, sharing cigarettes, waiting to carry the coffin to the tray back. They are dressed in black pants and white shirts for the second time this week. It is them that make me cry. Their dark, serious faces, eyes gazing at the dirt as they wait.
Thank you so much, Lenny. Anne Davis. Give it up for Anne Davis, ladies and gentlemen.
Great to be amongst this esteemed company this morning. Thanks, Yvette, for the opportunity. My poem's called Seduction in B minor. Sing me a song on your ukulele. String it tight and mean. Caress it with your ego. Pluck it till it hurts. C, G, D, in your own way, a prelude to the game. Marketing your manhood. Strumming up a line. Lead me along in tremolo. Vibrato me the vibe. Sweep pick me your sentiments, your foreplay of desire. Play me a tune in 3/4 time. Obscure the words in rhyme. Light the fire. Feel the heat, you master of deceit. How many songs in your repertoire? How many hearts in your ditch? How many fools to your fiddle, you fan of the female physique? String me along until it's too long. Capture me in verse. Rehearse your fascination, you fraud of the plectrum and fret. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, Anne. How was your morning? Wonderful. Okay, Penny Drysdale, great. Give it up for Penny.
Thank you. I used to live in Alice Springs, and I left Alice Springs because I lost a great love. And for a while I was homeless, like living around, but I ended up in Darwin, and I'm very grateful that Yvette has chosen one of my first Darwin poems to be in the collection, and I guess it's about finding Yarpeetnam in Darwin. It's called Darwin A Prelude, and there's 3 parts. Today I bought yellow cushions to slash my grey linen sheets. I wore a skirt with red trees growing out of the darkness, branches set fire by the sun. I felt new delight at the way each word conjures another and another. You can follow as they twist or turn what they tell. Go to page 4, page 9, page 12. You can get past the haunted painting, a ghost with gritted teeth tying you to an old, old story. Yes, you can. Open the big box, not the small one. You can. You can choose your own ending. I did think I was clever coming here in May. Many suns going down, the cool off the water, festival after festival, but then the afternoons grew into a womb, and I became something about to be born. A round thing made of fluid, laying in more fluid. A body without edges, an inside seeping out, an outside soaking in. A story with no beginning or ending or words or form. Instead of bearing or breathing, the louvers I close. Please, something electric, stop my dissolution. On top of cliffs, there is wind that thrashes my faces. I lean out into it. The water comes towards me, pulls away. I suppose a human should expect this. My heart is the sun sinking now, but this morning it rose, and there is somehow a courage to cross the sky, to give the world some new colour and heat and a storm. And now you tighten into a red ball, a glow, and you sink into the ocean. I have to expect this burning, this dying, this promise, the tender colour of your birth or your death, the pang of your loss that will come, and the risk that nothing will rise. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Penny. Thank you very much. And lucky last, but certainly not least, is one of my dear friends, Leo Ortega. And I'd also just like to mention that also Danny Powell and Fiona Durrell are in the anthology collection as well. So we have about 34 from the Territory from stock of 76, which we almost filled half the quota, and that also includes First Nation and LGBTQI contributors from around Australia. So please give it up for Leo.
Okay, I'll introduce myself reading 4 lines that I wrote yesterday as I volunteered in the election. Voting day in Central Australian desert. Business as usual in the middle of the most devastating environmental, humanitarian, economic and political crisis ever lived by humanity. The people seem totally oblivious about the situation and reluctant to hear about it. Everyone has their own beliefs and their own agenda, while ignoring the facts that warns us of the cataclysmic outcomes of our extractive economy and our wish for comfort without any consideration for the ecological system that supports us and everything that lives. And then I'm going to keep going. This is in a more aesthetic way, I hope. This poem is called Apocalypsis Echoes. Reality is a collective exudation by 7 billion people. A perplexing and sticky fluid that seems saturated with the same substance that gave John the most terrifying nightmare nearly 2,000 years ago. Touched by Jesus' teachings and horrified by the empire's tyranny, John fell prey of a baffling duplicity and dreamt his powerful warning. I moan these words in my time's colonial language. Our Mother Earth can manifest in many ways in cosmic eons, but life, the beautiful and diverse life that sustains our life, is a brief phenomenon of unfathomable fragility. Heedless of the uproarious apocalypse's echoes, humanity sleepwalks, hypnotized by darkness that relentlessly glows on the countless screens of the world. Aren't we humans part of Mother Earth's skin? Mother Earth with her breasts of fertile lands, irrigated by torrents of life flowing in her veins and capillaries. Folds and summits, the roughest and most delicate textures, we are sustained by her hallucinating diversity. What are we doing to our mother? Our cities are purulent chancres on the living tissue of her skin. Plastic and heavy venoms ooze from our infectious sores. I wrote that 20 years ago, and I have to stress it again, loud and clear. That's the only way I can feel I'm slowly going back to being myself. The screens are the most fascinating invention, unifying several forms of art in a complex experience that encompasses our entire perception. The laboratories and think tanks behind the screens have corrupted objectives, though. Our senses are deceived. Poetry searches for beauty within mine and others' hearts. I was going to be a poet, an actor, a writer, but I was forced into the art of the numb, and that made me vomit. That was advertising, by the way. I turned to the objects then, assembling my desperate questions to the world, exploring the borders where civilization collide, and the world opened to my mind, and I offered you my words. Thank you.
So, as co-editor with Margan for the Australian Anthology Volume 7, 2019, as a board director of Australian Poetry, and as the chairperson of Australia's First Nation Writers Network, I now declare the Australian Anthology Poetry launched at Alice Springs Northern Territory Writers Festival 2019 Olive Pink.